Hi guys, thanks for joining me today. I'm Marilyn and my channel's Making with Marilyn. Now I do all things crafty, but on today's video, I'm going to use these sublimation pins that I just received and see how they work out. Now you get 10 pins, some heat tape, and then these tiny little shrink wrap sleeves. And so I'm going to go ahead and turn the camera around, face down at the table. Let's see how these turn out. I've never tried them. I'm excited to. Let's do it. Now I'm going to be making these pins in a convection oven. Other than that, everything you see here I think is what I'm going to be using. And so I have 4 designs. I'll just make one of each design today. And I have a crayon design. I think that's grapefruit, an animal print with glitter hearts, and then this pin will say Making with Marilyn, and there's animal print at the top and the bottom. Now these don't look very good right now because before you add heat, it's pretty dull. But hopefully these will be really bright and vibrant later. And then here's what came in the package, the heat tape. All right, I didn't mention in the intro that you also get replacement cartridges. And so in addition to each ink pen having a cartridge in it, you get an additional cartridge for each pen. Here's the tiny little shrink wrap, and that's it. Now before I sublimate these, I'll clean it with alcohol. This is 90% alcohol, paper towel. When I put the shrink wrap on, I'm going to see if I can do it with this heat tool here. I have a pair of scissors, sublimation glove, or a heat glove, I'm sorry, a rotary tool, a ruler. I have this measuring tape. Now I always check to make sure once I think I know what the measurement is, I measure it with the ruler also. And then if you have not discovered these little cutting mats at the Dollar Tree store, they're fabulous. They're thick. For $1.25, I think I picked up 3 or 4 of those. So the first thing that I did to determine the size of my image is I went ahead and took this apart. You just unscrew this end, and then there's your ink cartridge and the little spring and this end. So I'm just going to keep all that together, set it over here to the side, and then now that that's out, this end just pulls off. And then there's the inside from that end. Now to determine how big to make my design, I took this tape, and you wouldn't have to use this tape. I just like it because it has measurements. And I cut it off even at one of the inch marks. I went around my pen. And then once I got to where it was overlapping, I just kind of made a mark with my fingernail in it. It shows that it's right at about 1.25 inches. But then just to do a reality check, I put it up against the real ruler. So I think that this is 1.25 inches around and 4.2 inches long. Now the longest part of this is right here. See how it angles? So you have to measure the longest part, and I think that's 4.2. So then I made my design 1.35 by 4.3, so I'd have a little bit extra. I can always cut that off. So we're going to see if that's the right size. Okay, so before I do anything else, I want to go ahead and clean this. This may not be necessary, but I just like to do it. All I do is spray a little bit of the 90% alcohol on a rag, or in this case a paper towel, and just clean it off. And then after I've done that, I dry it. Now, I've never done the pins before. That's how I do tumblers. So I'm assuming this is going to be pretty much the same process as a tumbler. All right, I'm going to set that aside for now. Now, before I do all 4 at one time, I want to go ahead, get my oven heated up, and just try one. I'm going to go ahead and just separate these first. I don't know if I want to use scissors or my rotary tool. I'll just go ahead and use the rotary tool. Now, I like this ruler because it has this cork on the back, so it keeps it from slipping. So at this point, I'm just going to cut off the extra white, and then we'll see if it fits. Now, I'm just using concepts that I've learned from doing the tumblers, which is make sure that you don't have any white on this, unless it's off the ends of your blank. And I just realized the way this is angled, this crayon one might not look great, but we're going for it. Okay. I need to figure out where do I want this on my ink pen, and I think I want it opposite of where the little thing that you push down on is. So I'm going to put it down like that, and then I'm going to try to center that front side. Let me look at it here. I'm going to try to have that fairly centered. And so the ends of this, where you have all your black lines and the squiggly thing, those are not going to be perfect, but it's going to be okay. Now I probably ought to cut off some tape, because once I get into this, it's going to be hard to cut the tape and hold it. So I'll just get a couple of pieces of this cut off. That way I'm ready. All right, so this tape is so tiny, makes it a little bit hard to work with. You wouldn't have to use their tape, but I'm going to use it. Okay, so let me go ahead and wrap this side and then pull up the other. Well, actually, let me just keep rolling. Hopefully I have this wide enough. Okay, so that width looks perfect. But I will say, these are harder to work with than tumblers. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go ahead and take one piece of tape and place it on the side that I want on the top. And the reason I want this side on the top is it might have a tiny bit of white left on it. And if I had that on the bottom, that would cause a white line. So then I'm going to go ahead and just pull that tape over to pull my paper tight. Okay, hopefully that did it. Then I'm going to do the same thing, just a little bit up from that. Place it down on the part of the paper I want on top, and then pull it as tight as I can over the other side. And these are so tiny that I know my fingers and my hands are going to cover up all this. So I'll hold it up to the camera in just a minute so you can see what I'm doing. What I want to do is just get this at least on the pen, and then I'll add more tape. Okay, so let me see if I can do this up in the air. I'm pushing down on the paper I want on the bottom, and then I'm pulling on the tape that's on the top side. So there's what it looks like so far. Now notice how loose that is. So I'm going to take a piece and go down that seam. Now I'm really tempted to get my wider tape. I think that would be a lot easier, but I'm going to work with what they sent me. Because if you order these, you might only have what they sent to you. So let's try it out. All right, so now I'm just going to take this tape and lay it lengthwise all the way down on top, get it attached to that top piece, and then I'm going to try to pull it over really snugly anywhere where there's not already tape. Now I could probably just cut off this excess tape, but I'm just going to pull it across and put it down on the other side. Now this side got kind of bunched up. There we go. Okay, just like on a tumbler, I'm going to push that paper inward so that it's really tight up against that. Same thing on this end. And then the last thing I'm going to do is put a piece of tape around so that each end is really nice and snug. Then we're going to put the shrink wrap on. Now I feel like this is overkill because that's going to have shrink wrap on it. So we're just going to end right there. Let's put the shrink wrap on. And then just push this through. My tape isn't very secure there. But as the shrink wrap heats up, it's going to pull it tight. And you have extra room on each end. That's nice. Now, just in case this gets hot, I'm going to go ahead and put my heat glove on. Now, when I do this, I'm not going to leave the heat in one area for very long, and I'm not going to get it super close. I've not used shrink wrap very often. I tried it on 1 or 2 tumblers, and I got a tumbler press. So I'm just not real experienced with this. So let's see how this goes. Now, when I used shrink wrap on a tumbler, I got it super tight, and it was almost like it was trying to bust open. When this goes in the oven, it's going to continue to heat. As it continues to heat, the shrink wrap is going to continue to shrink. And so I don't think you have to give it overly tight. But that's what it looks like so far. Now this is the convection oven that I'm going to use. And I'll put the name of it in the description. A friend of mine gave this to me, so I don't really know where you buy them, but whatever convection oven you get, there's tons out there that work with this. The instructions online said to do a temperature of 380 for 5 minutes. Now I like to have a little silicone mat. I bought a large mat and I just cut this off. So all I'm going to do is place it inside and then put my pin on it. It says 5 minutes. I'm not even going to rotate it. Just going to put it in there and forget about it. Now I do have something inside that lets me know the temperature, and right now it's looking like it's good. Now I really wanted to go ahead and remove this while it was still really hot, because what I found is shrink wrap's easier to remove when it's hot. And even though it's just been less than 2 minutes, this is already fairly cool. I mean, it's warm, but it's not hot. And that's probably because this metal is so thin. The reason I like to remove it quickly is because what I found was shrink wrap is so much easier to remove when it's still hot and pliable. But we will suffer through and we'll get it off one way or another. Ooh, I see a little peek of it. That looks pretty good. Look at that. There's a little sneak peek. Super cute. All right, that turned out really, really nice. I just need to figure out a better method for getting that shrink wrap off. Now, the seam would have been right about in there. I can't even notice it. I see it a little bit right there. But it looks good. Then we roll it around, and there's what would be the crayon, like the color of the crayon. Maybe I should have put the word blue in there. But this was just my first one. Let's go ahead and put this back together. All right, so there is a little divot right there. And that's where The thing down there needs to go. Okay, got that back on. And then go ahead and put the cartridge back in and then screw this down. And let's use this. You just push right there to make that come out. And this is just the envelope it came in. Whoops, I poked through it. Right's fine. That is cute. I'm going to go ahead and make the other 3 designs. I'll really just fast forward through that. Now, as I fast forward through this, I'm just going to go back through the steps. So the first thing I did is I cut my designs apart. And when you do this, you want to make sure there's not going to be any white paper up against your pen. Now, step 2, go ahead and take your pens apart. And then I go ahead and I clean them with 90% alcohol. This might be an optional step, but it's one that I don't skip. Now after that, the most difficult part for me was to get the pins wrapped and taped. The first one was really difficult, but as you can see, I ended up getting better. And so I think the more of these I do, the more confident that I'll be, and it'll get easier. Notice I'm using the larger tape though. Now let's go ahead and add the shrink wrap. And then after I get each of these inside the shrink wrap, I need to go ahead and apply heat so that it kind of gets tight around the pin. Not super tight, but a little bit tight. Now that it's time to cook them, I'm going to go ahead and cook them at 380 degrees for 5 minutes. Now I slowed it down so you could see how raggedy these look. They kind of came apart in the oven. And I'm going to go ahead and show you all 3 did the same thing. But I end up discovering that that kind of worked to my advantage because look, I just pull it off and then I slide this little ink pen out, kind of like taking crab meat out of a crab leg. And look how cute that is. I think it turned out really nice. Now, just so I'm not saying the same thing over and over, let's speed this back up. And as I'm filming this, I'm just talking away, talking about how cute they are, this, that, and the other. Showing you where the slot was, and then I just put them back together. Now that I'm all done, what do you think? Do you like them? I'm really happy with how these came out, and I think they're a really good price. So thanks so much for joining me, and until my next video, bye-bye. Now, if you haven't subscribed yet, check out my comment.